Judging someone solely on the consequences of their actions and conduct is the basis of consequentialism as a whole. How people then choose to view the nuances and the complexities that come from those actions and consequences decide the different varieties of consequentialism. Such varieties include utilitarianism, which focuses on maximizing the happiness of the majority over the happiness of one singular person. Another being ethical altruism, which is very similar to it, where an individual takes actions to have the best consequences for everyone else except for themselves, versus the opposite form, that would be ethical egoism, where the consequences for the individual are taken more into heart and matter more than the consequences that happen to everyone else around them. If it is helping the individual themselves, then it is the correct thing to do. Another form that might be considered a bit more darker is Machiavellianism, where the ends justifies the means. Even if the means is a very morally or societally determined wrong thing to do, if the end product helps the majority or helps them, then it is the correct thing and the morally correct thing to do. This means that while consequentialism is a complex property, there is multiple sides to each coin, and people have to decide which side they are willing to take and which side they believe is the true side. While there is no all-knowing truth, everyone has to make a decision for themselves. A good example of this is with the trolley problem. While it is an oversimplified problem of having 5 people tied to a track and one person tied to another track with a trolley rolling towards the 5 people and the possibility of one person switching a flip and the trolley instead killing the one person instead of the 5 people it's meant to kill, the different views of consequentialism can cause the different outcomes. While one person might decide that it is their moral duty to flip the switch, another will decide that it is actually their moral duty to not interfere with it at all because it is more important for it to happen. Then once you involve more complex steps and more complex pieces to that problem, such as an outer world around it and who exactly those people are, and if there are consequences to flipping the switch or to not flipping the switch, it becomes even more complex. If there's consequences to interfering and flipping the switch, such as they might go to jail or they might be charged for murder, then ethical egoism will state that it is their moral duty to, in fact, not flip the switch at all, even though 4 or 5 people will die because of it, because then they do not suffer any consequences or guilt over the situation. Versus ethical altruism, which might state that it then is still their moral duty to flip the switch because the majority will survive, even if they have to suffer horrendous consequences due to it. The same might be said about the Machiavellianism, which you would think altruism and Machiavellianism would not get along on some cases, but they still might, because Machiavellianism would state that it is their moral duty to cause the best outcome. The best outcome being the majority lives. So it would be their duty to flip the switch, or in an alternate version where it is you have to push someone in the way, it would still be their duty as a person to push the person into the way so that the majority could live. Another form of this problem, discussed in Stanford's Encyclopedia of Psychology on their article on consequentialism, is a 5 patients and 1 donor situation, where the doctor knows that this one patient, completely healthy otherwise, if they kill them, they can save 5 other people with doing transplants. Is it their moral duty to do it, or is it against moral rules to help them and kill that person? When you add in more complex statements, it becomes a lot more complicated. Some utilitarianisms will state that it is morally wrong to cut up the donor in certain circumstances because killing someone is a much deeper crime than letting 4 or 5 people die. Some might state that it is still more important that the majority lives because they are more useful than just one singular person. Thinking in the form of one person versus 5 people and their usefulness is very dangerous because, well, some people would consider the usefulness of a person important. It is also important to remember that every single person has their own thoughts processes. What is right, what is relative, as well as the rules of society around you are very important to remember when taking anything into account. And the different forms of consequentialism sometimes disregard what someone's singular rights are, as well as what is relative to the world around them. And that is always important to remember.